An appeals court has rejected President Trump's bid to overturn a jury verdict that found him liable for sexually assaulting and defaming writer E. Jean Carroll. In 2023, the federal jury in Lower Manhattan awarded her $5 million in damages. The president's lawyers asked the appeals court for a retrial. That was denied. Carroll's attorney said in a statement that she's pleased with the decision. The Supreme Court is the president's last hope of overturning that decision.
Señores, Donald Trump, una vez más, intentando evadir las consecuencias de sus actos legales. En esta ocasión se trata de los $5 millones que le debe a Jean Carroll por agresión sexual y por difamación. Recordemos que este caso ya fue juzgado. Es más, el jurado falló en contra de Trump. Él apeló y nuevamente perdió. No conforme con esto, quiso que toda la Corte de Apelaciones del segundo circuito reabriera el caso. Lo que se llama esto es una audiencia en banc con todos los jueces. ¿Qué sucedió? También se lo negaron. Donald Trump está haciendo todo lo posible para no pagar estos millones. Pero amigos, todo indica que se le está acabando las opciones. Sean bienvenidos a Políticamente Desacuerdo. Amigos, hoy veremos cómo Trump sufre una derrota sorpresa en los tribunales. Los invito a que se queden hasta el final de este video porque veremos los detalles más interesantes. Pues bueno amigos, lo único que actualmente Donald Trump tiene por hacer es acudir a la Corte Suprema. Pero seamos realistas, ¿qué probabilidades hay de que acepten revisar este caso civil, al menos entre dos particulares, por el tema de difamación? Y eso, sin ninguna cuestión constitucional de por medio. Yo creo que muy pocas. La Corte recibe miles de solicitudes y solo escoge unas pocas. Pues esto no parece estar ni cerca de ser una prioridad. Aunque claro, tenemos a jueces como Thomas y Alito, ¿no? Uno nunca sabe con estos jueces, ¿no? Pero incluso, parece que ni siquiera ellos podrían salvar a Trump en esta ocasión. Hablemos de otro caso que viene, y es que son los $83 millones. Es otro juicio, ojo, misma víctima, mismo acusado, mismo juez y mismo tribunal, solo que en un diferente jurado. ¿Qué creen? Trump volvió a perder. Todo esto apunta a que va a repetir el mismo patrón, que es apelar, perder, pedir una audiencia en banc, que se la nieguen, va a la Corte Suprema y de nuevo lo más probable es que lo rechacen. Vemos un ciclo eterno donde el presidente Trump no aprende nada, literalmente.
I wasn't going to ask this, and it may be rude, so you don't have to answer if you don't want. I'll put this either to Ms. Crowley or Ms. Kaplan if either of you wants to field it. You are both very experienced trial attorneys. You've been up against some of the best and brightest opposing counsel in all sorts of different trials. How is President Trump's lawyering? Is he well represented in court?
I'm going to let Crowley answer that, but I will say that what you heard just now in that tape of Alina Habba leaving the court and kind of yelling at the reporters, that's what we heard every single day, multiple times during this trial, but yelling at the judge. And it was unbelievably nerve-wracking each time it happened, and it happened multiple times every day.
Yeah. Thanks for handing that one over to me. I think that she had a hard job, and you could definitely see a difference between her sort of style when he was in the courtroom and when he was not there. She was much more disciplined and frankly acted more like a lawyer when he wasn't there. When he was, I mean, you could hear him telling her when to object and muttering things and, you know, loudly being frustrated with her. And I think she felt like she had to say things to the judge and to us and sort of put on a performance like you just saw in front of the TV cameras.
Eugene, in terms of the,
Y lo más increíble es que luego de perder el primer juicio y pagar $5 millones, Trump siguió difamando a Jean Carroll con las mismas palabras que lo metieron en problemas la primera vez. O sea, es decir, el tipo no tiene control alguno, ¿no? Por eso la segunda demanda le están pidiendo 83 millones de castigo. Solo piénsenlo, ¿no? En la mayoría de los casos, una multa de 5 millones sería como que lo suficiente para que cualquiera se quedara callado. Pero no, señores, Trump no, él siguió hablando. Siguió terminando y cavando su propio agujero. No una, sino 2 veces. Lo más absurdo de todo esto es que Jim Carroll podría haberle, no sé, metido una tercera demanda, ¿no? Porque Trump no se detuvo. Siguió repitiendo las mismas frases, minimizando el caso, diciendo que ni la conoce, pero hasta ahora Jim Carroll ha decidido no ir por una tercera vuelta. Sinceramente, amigos, ¿quién la culparía por si lo quiere hacer? Trump no ha mostrado una sola señal de arrepentimiento, y es más, todo lo contrario, ha seguido ofendiéndola públicamente, e incluso luego de 2 sentencias en su contra. Ahora bien, todo este proceso de apelaciones lógicamente no es gratis. Los abogados cobran, los procesos toman su tiempo. Y aunque Jim Carroll ha demostrado ser dura como el acero, no deja de ser algo agotador emocional y financieramente. Es más, se especula ya que su equipo legal trabaja bajo un acuerdo de contingencia, o sea, es decir, que van a cobrar un porcentaje del dinero que se recupere. Y si es así, pues bien pagado lo tienen, ¿no? Porque sin duda han hecho un trabajo ejemplar. Por suerte, Trump ya habrá tenido que depositar el dinero en la corte para poder apelar, ¿no? Lo cual le garantiza a Jim Carroll una posibilidad muy real de cobrar, a diferencia de muchas otras víctimas de difamación, como lo es Ruby Freeman y su hija, ¿no? Que aún están tratando de cobrarle al ex aliado de Trump, Rudy Giuliani. Entonces, ¿qué es lo que sigue? Donald Trump tiene solo unos días para poder presentar su petición ante la Corte Suprema. Luego la Corte puede tomarse el tiempo que quieran prácticamente para decidir si aceptan o no el caso, pero lo más probable es que lo rechacen sin siquiera dar una explicación. Quizás 1 o 2 jueces lleguen a escribir alguna nota disidente, pero el resultado ya parece estar cantado. Así que si todo esto sigue el curso en las próximas semanas, podríamos tener finalmente un cierre del primer caso de los $5 millones. Y ahí sí, Trump tendrá que pagar, y muy caro, porque el segundo juicio son más de 80 millones. Señores, no solo es una historia judicial, sino que es una historia sobre una mujer que se atrevió a enfrentar al hombre más poderoso del país. Y ganó 2 veces. Y ahora está a punto de cobrar justicia. Justicia muy cara. Pues bueno, amigos, pasemos a hablar del siguiente tema, y es cómo Jamie Raskin ha salido a criticar duramente a Trump con el tema del desfile militar. Este intento de Trump de querer imponer su voluntad por encima de la Constitución, amenazando a quienes protestan, rodeándose de funcionarios que al parecer no entienden el papel de la ley. Vamos a ver a continuación parte de una entrevista del congresista Jamie Raskin, el cual no se guardó nada a la hora de denunciar lo que está ocurriendo. Veamos esto.
President Trump has long wanted to stage a massive military parade down the streets of Washington, D.C., and even though it looks like he will finally get his wish later today, he might not be happy with the day's events. Not only because his parade might be drowned out by poor weather, but also by the nearly 2,000 protests scheduled to take place across the country. And while Trump threatened people earlier this week who want to protest by saying they will be met with, quote, very heavy force, that threat could actually juice his turnout. So join us now to discuss is Representative Jamie Raskin of Maryland, who is the ranking Democrat on the House Judiciary Committee. Congressman Raskin, thanks so much for being with us. We want to start out today by playing something that Pete Hegseth said today at a congressional hearing. Let's go with that.
Can you assure the American people on 2 things? You will respect any Supreme Court decision on this matter about whether the Marines are constitutional, and you will respect the district courts when they rule before the Supreme Court rules.
What I can say is we should not have local judges determining foreign policy or national security policy for the country.
So you're not willing to say you would respect those decisions?
What I'm saying is local district judges shouldn't make foreign policy for the United States.
That exchange happened on Thursday of this week. So, Congressman, when you have the Secretary of Defense saying that, yes, Marines might defy court orders, are we at a constitutional crisis?
Well, we clearly have too many DUI hires in the Trump administration, starting with Secretary Hegseth. But look, the Constitution says that the Constitution and federal law are supreme. We have a supreme constitution. We don't have a supreme leader. We have no dictators here. We have no kings. We have no monarchs. This is civilian government, and there's a reason that Congress is in Article 1, and all legislative power is vested in the Congress, just like all judicial power is vested in the Supreme Court and in the inferior court. So what's the job of the president? To take care that the laws are faithfully executed. So let the message go out through the Trump administration. Your job is to faithfully execute the laws that have been adopted by the people in the House, in the Senate, and signed into law by the president.
Congressman, you know, President Trump this week, and we played the sound, but probably don't need to play it again, but you heard and you've seen it, that the people that want to protest, they're going to be met with very big force, heavy force, he said later. I guess I'm just curious what this is not new rhetoric, right? You've been paying attention to Donald Trump for a very long time, but does it feel like it's ratcheted up and that where the tensions are right now with everything we're watching, does it feel scarier?
Well, and this is a critical point because having the First Amendment, the freedom of speech, the freedom of the press, the right to petition government for redress of grievances, the right of the people to freely assemble is the very opposite of having a king, because kings brook no dissent. They don't tolerate people's free speech. So that's why in the last several weeks we've seen some remarkable things happen. We saw a state judge arrested in Wisconsin. Our colleague, Senator Padilla, was thrown to the ground with his arms behind his back and handcuffed. My colleague, LaMonica MacGyver from New Jersey, just received a criminal indictment and faces 17 years in prison because she went to a scheduled appointment at an ICE facility and then was in that scrum of people around the mayor of Newark as they decided to manhandle him. They sent the Marines to California, and they illegally tried to federalize the National Guard in California. But the remarkable thing about our constitutional system is how resilient all the other parts of the government are. And I'm proud of the governor of California, the mayor of Los Angeles, the sheriff, and the chief of police there who said, thanks, but no thanks. We don't need your help. You're just going to make things worse. And so far, we're winning in court there. There are now 184 federal preliminary injunctions or temporary restraining orders against this reign of lawlessness across the country. And today we're going to see a magnificent manifestation of the freedom of speech and what it means to have that in our society.
You know, Congressman, I'm going to pick up on something because as you were running through the litany of public officials, elected officials who have been retaliated against by this administration, you talked about, you know, the scheduled appointment, and that made me think of all the immigrants we have seen be detained, removed, deported from hearings, appointments, to be a part of the legal process, following the rules that they were told to follow, and getting snatched up by the immigration services. And I'm going to put up this headline from military.com from yesterday. ICE arrests Louisiana mother of a 9-week-old wife of Marine at immigration hearing. And this case highlights how the Trump administration's immigration crackdown is increasingly being driven by arrests at immigration check-ins and court hearings. If people are showing up at court, if people are showing up at immigration check-ins, they are following the rules. They are following the laws as set forth by the American government.
Yeah. Well, and this is unfortunately a standard practice now. We've been seeing this happen all over the country. That was the same occasion upon which the judge in Wisconsin was arrested as well. You know, to preview what I'm going to be talking about at the No Kings rallies today, I went through the Declaration of Independence and the Bill of Particulars that was leveled against King George. And one of the very early things that the colonists were complaining about was the fact that the king was interfering with naturalization and people's ability to get into the country. And so there are some striking analogies between the things that the American revolutionaries said about King George and about what's going on today, like stationing troops in people's communities over the objections of the local.
Ahí lo tienen, amigos, claro y sin anestesia. Tenemos una constitución suprema, no un líder supremo. Lo que dice Jamie Raskin no es solo un comentario político, es una advertencia. Cuando el secretario de Defensa de Trump sugiere que los marines pueden ignorar decisiones judiciales, amigos, lo que está en juego no es un desfile, es la esencia misma de la democracia. Y es que esta no es la primera vez que Trump y su equipo actúan como si las leyes fueran opcionales. El presidente jura hacer cumplir fielmente la ley, pero lo que hace es escoger cuáles leyes le convienen y cuáles no. Es más, cuando Trump amenaza a los manifestantes diciendo que serán recibidos con una fuerza muy pesada, no está hablando como líder de una democracia, está hablando como un déspota. ¿Por qué? ¿Desde cuándo protestar pacíficamente es un delito? ¿Desde cuándo necesitamos permiso para disentir? También estamos hablando de jueces arrestados, de senadores demócratas tirados al suelo, alcaldes manoseados por marines, que en teoría no deberían ni estar ahí. ¿Qué clase de administración responde con represión cuando se le cuestiona? La respuesta: una administración que le teme al poder del pueblo. Y eso al menos explica por qué están usando la maquinaria del Estado para castigar la disidencia. No es solo sobre migrantes, amigos, es sobre este desfile, es sobre este abuso de poder, ¿no? Este abuso de cuando se le cuestiona.
Welcome to the weekend. I'm Jonathan Capehart, along with Eugene Daniels and Elise Jordan, filling in for Jackie Alamany, who is on maternity leave. Today, we begin with a split screen of dueling visions for America at a critical inflection point. Here in Washington, tanks and artillery launchers will roll through the streets of our nation's capital in the first military parade since 1991, when the U.S. celebrated the end of the Gulf War. Today's spectacle is officially meant to honor the 250th anniversary of the Army, but it also happens to fall on President Trump's 79th birthday. Roughly 7,000 soldiers will march, and big crowds are expected to line Constitution Avenue to watch the parade. The Army estimates the cost of this grand display will be $45 million, and not everybody is happy about it. According to a brand new NBC News Decision Desk poll out this morning, 64% of Americans oppose the use of government funds for the parade. Meanwhile, in very different scenes playing out across the country, organizers are staging protests in hundreds of cities and towns in what they are calling a nationwide day of defiance. Dubbed the No Kings protests, demonstrators are taking to the streets to oppose Trump's agenda and what they see as his disregard for the Constitution and autocratic-style leadership. The protests come during a week of heightened tensions over President Trump's immigration raids, a week that saw Democratic Senator Alex Padilla, the senior senator from California, forcibly removed from DHS Secretary Kristi Noem's press conference on Thursday. Joining us now, MSNBC political analyst and Pulitzer Prize-winning columnist Eugene Robinson and former Democratic Congressman Max Rose of New York, senior advisor at VoteVets and a U.S. Army veteran. Eugene, Max, thank you both very much for coming to the weekend. Max, let me get your reaction to what President Trump said on Tuesday, responding to what will happen if there are people protesting, just protesting the military parade here in Washington. Watch this.
We're going to be celebrating big on Saturday. We're going to have a lot of, and if there's any protester who wants to come out, they will be met with very big force. By the way, for those people that want to protest, they're going to be met with very big force. And I haven't even heard about a protest, but, you know, this is people that hate our country, but they will be met with very heavy force.
Max, he's talking about people who just show up and exercise their right under the Constitution to freedom of speech, freedom of expression.
American citizens, mostly.
Right. Of course, it's amazing he didn't have that same opinion in regards to January 6th. protesters. But, you know, we can't look at this military parade in a silo, right? This is not a conversation about whether or not we're celebrating the Army. I've given a big chunk of my life to the Army. I love the U.S. Army. But there's actually a technical term for what is happening today, and it's not a parade. It's a show of force. And that's a technical military term. You could celebrate the Army with just some simple soldiers walking down Pennsylvania Avenue. You don't need the tanks. You don't need the Stryker vehicles. You don't need the artillery equipment. And who is the audience for that show of force? Certainly people will be viewing it globally, but also protesters, peaceful protesters, United States citizens protesting, standing up for their constitutional rights throughout the nation. And that's the problem. Donald Trump doesn't look at the enemy abroad. He's looking at his political opponents here at home as his enemy.
And Mr. Robinson, because I can't call you Eugene.
Call me Eugene.
It's too Eugene. We'll go there. You know, one of the things that has been kind of nagging at me, and I think, you know, the congressman spoke to it really well, about this domestic audience. One of the reasons that the military officials, the folks in the Pentagon, his advisors, did not want him doing this in the first term is, in their words, is that this is what dictators do.
Right.
Other than Bastille Day, which is where he kind of got the idea, this is not something we see in democracies, right? Because the audience is the domestic audience. When we see this happening in North Korea, that is because Kim Jong-un is telling the folks of his country, this is who I have. This is what could happen to you.
Exactly. They stage a hell of a parade in North Korea.
Right.
Also in China, every 10 years they do, hundreds of thousands of people. These are shows of force, as Max said. They're absolutely. And this is so antithetical to the way the Army was founded. 250 years ago, it was founded by the Second Continental Congress after Lexington and Concord. Reluctantly. The First Continental Congress had not wanted a standing army. But they said, okay, well, we need a standing army because the British are indeed coming. But they did it. The whole sense of what they were trying to do is we're not like Britain. We're not going to have this sort of overweening army that is a factor in our political life. We're not going to use it that way. We're going to use it for our defense and ultimately for our independence. This is not what we do as a country, and we're doing it today.
Okay, I want to play devil's advocate here.
Oh, the devil don't need no lawyer.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Right. He's got plenty working overtime. So in general, one of my most controversial opinions is that I don't like ceremonial. I think cemeteries are a lot of good real estate in a lot of cities. Like, I'm not one for like the ceremonial necessarily.
Okay.
So I'm saying that just to say, but are we missing the point here, and we're letting what's happening with Trump overcome what should be a celebration of the U.S. military?
But see,
and there are 7,000 troops that have to go. They have orders today.
Sure, of course.
So what is the balance between recognizing that this is politicized, that this is a waste of taxpayer dollars, which I just said, cemeteries, like you don't have to talk to me over here about wasting taxpayer dollars, but how do we still support the troops?
But to be clear, it isn't happening in a silo, like you said. None of this is happening in a vacuum. You have the President of the United States. This was planned, right? We all knew this was coming. The military was always going to do something for the 250th
Exactly. The Army had
anniversary.
plans.
They had other plans, but in February, they changed their plans because they knew that Donald Trump wanted this. And the folks in the Pentagon, Hegseth and his team, made those changes. Now, I'm a military brat. I'm an Army vet. My dad was military intelligence for 21 years. I was in Fort Bragg twice. Both my siblings were there. We bounced around everywhere. So I am pro-military. I'm pro the Army. I'm a fan, right? It has been a part of my life. The thing is, you can do that without having this happen while in L.A. you have the Marines there, right? Donald Trump knew when he had on this Saturday was going to have this parade that there was going to be a problem when he sent the Marines in, right? If that wasn't happening, right, people will still have an issue with it, but the fact that it's all happening at the same time is the problem, I assume.
Y lo más increíble es que este gobierno ya acumula como 184 órdenes judiciales en su contra, Por eso, señores, cuando vemos a Trump tratando de llenar las calles de tanques, no lo hace por patriotismo, lo hace porque necesita crear una imagen de poder, aunque eso signifique pisotearte los derechos fundamentales. Ahora sé que hay quienes dirán, pero todos los presidentes tienen el derecho a mostrar el poder militar. Ok, pero en contextos muy distintos, amigos. Mostrar fuerza no es lo mismo que utilizarla para intimidar a tu propia gente. O sea, en este caso, no es un desfile, es una excusa. Quieren reforzar su imagen autoritaria. No se trata del orgullo nacional, sino que es pura propaganda política. Y eso, amigos, es inaceptable. Al final del día lo que nos está mostrando no es fuerza, es miedo. Miedo a las voces que no lo aplauden, miedo a las leyes que lo limitan, el miedo a perder el poder que tanto controla, como si fuese un derecho divino. Este país no fue fundado sobre coronas ni sobre caprichos de un solo hombre, fue fundado sobre la resistencia al abuso. Así que hoy más que nunca, señores, vale la pena recordar lo que dijo Jamie Raskin. Tenemos una constitución suprema, no un líder supremo. Pero bueno, ahora les pregunto a ustedes, ¿creen que estamos entrando en una etapa tan peligrosa para la democracia? ¿Qué opinan ustedes sobre el uso de las fuerzas militares contra la propia ciudadanía? Los invito a que me dejen sus opiniones en la caja de comentarios. Muchísimas gracias por acompañarme hasta el final de este video. Recuerda, como siempre, dale like, compártelo con tus amigos y suscríbete a nuestro canal Políticamente en Desacuerdo. Nos vemos en el próximo video. Hasta luego.